Hello and welcome to another amazing part of What If Izuku Has Foresight? Okugurai wrote this amazing story. Please support them. Don't forget to like, sub, and leave a comment. Now let's dive in. Aizawa Shuta's phone rings. He glances up from his paperwork and curses. It's late, he'd been about to call it a day and head out for patrol. This better not be something else he has to deal with. Eraserhead, Shoyuta says, accepting the call. What's this about? Oh. He recognizes Hawk's voice. Well, I thought. What? Shoyuta asks. You sent out a backup request? Hawk tries. What? Shoyuta asks. He knows that he didn't. It came through the network? It has coordinates right next to where we picked up those villains the other day. Hawk says quickly. I'm in the middle of a patrol right now, should I head that way? Foresight, Shoyuta realizes. Yeah, think so, Hawks agrees. So I should check it out? Do it. Send me the coordinates, I'll be there soon, Shoyuta says, then hangs up. He forwards the recording of the call to Night Eye and Tsukachi, then gathers his hero gear and sprints to the front of the office. He grabs the arm of the nearest cop and tells him that they're going to Kamino. During the ride he calls Night Eye. You heard what Hawk said? Shoyuta asks. Yes. I agree, it's got to be Foresight's doing somehow. Night Eye says. The sounds in the background indicate he's walking somewhere. I'll be there in a few minutes. I'm getting a hold of All Might, Night Eye says. Once he's aware of the situation I'll be there as soon as I can. Got it? Shoyuta says, then hangs up. For the rest of the drive he holds tightly to the seat belt and tries not to come up with disastrous reasons that Foresight would have faked a backup request. When he finally gets to the coordinates, he finds the remains of what once was a warehouse and he realizes that he'd underestimated the vigilante. He hadn't just contacted in pro-hero Hawks. He'd called in over a dozen pro-heroes. And now they were fighting creatures like the one who'd attacked the USJ, along with a number of villains Shoyuta recognizes. They were in the group who attacked the training exercise, the ones who hadn't been captured during the fight. Shoyuta steps out of the police car, then leans back into the door. Create a perimeter, he tells the driver, at least 2 blocks in all directions. Call in more squads. Then he turns abruptly and heads toward the wreckage of the warehouse. As he gets closer, his fears lessen. These new creatures don't seem as strong as the one which attacked the USJ. They are unmistakably of the same kind. But some have wings or other strange appendages. Shoyuta recognizes MT Lady and Kamui Woods, as well as a number of fellow teachers at UA. Shoyuta sees a creature about to leave the scene pulled back toward the center of the fight by Hawk's wings. Shoyuta steps forward to help, then pauses. There's not much he can do here. Most of the heroes are heavy hitters, optimized for direct combat. If he went in, his quirk would be entirely ill-suited to the fight. He'd be more of a liability than an asset. Shoyuta realizes that this is the perfect attack for causing significant harm to the villains. Foresight had planned this. He'd called in heroes who would be well-suited to the brute strength of the creatures, along with choosing heroes with quirks powerful against villains present. Foresight had carefully planned it so that they'd all appear at the same time, a simulacrum of an organized attack against all for one. Once again, Foresight has played them perfectly. Eraserhead watches as the fight continues. A few more heroes arrive, and then All Might crashes into the fight with his signature flare. The sun has long since set, it's nearing midnight now. It's getting cold and he absently wonders if he could find a sleeping bag somewhere. Shuta's walkie-talkie crackles to life. He carefully doesn't jump at the sound. I've arrived, Night Eye says. Status? I'm watching the scene. Seems that we don't have anything to do here, he says flatly. There's a long moment of silence. Shoyuta can imagine Night Eye sighing. I'll stay here and deal with the paperwork, Shoyuta offers resignedly. I'd appreciate that, Night Eye answers. Shoyuta glances away from the fight, which is winding down now, and toward the crowd. Despite the late hour, a large number of civilians have gathered to watch the fight. They're being held back from the fight by the police line and seem to be. Shoyuta freezes. That's Foresight. That's definitely Foresight. He's short and slight. He seems younger than Shoyuta remembers. But he has the same pale gray hair and green eyes. A man and woman are with him, both tall and thin. The man is smiling widely as he slings an arm over Foresight's shoulder. He gestures toward the fight and says something that makes Foresight laugh. God, he looks too young to be a vigilante. Then Foresight sees Shoyuta. He instantly pales and freezes in place. Shoyuta reaches down to his walkie-talkie. Belay that. I've spotted Foresight, he's east of the fight on 24th. He'll likely run north, we can corner him if you're in that direction. Copy, Night Eye responds instantly. Shoyuta starts moving toward Foresight, activating his quirk on the vigilante. That seems to scare him even more and he shoves his way away from the man he was with. Then he starts sprinting away from Shoyuta, heading north, just like Shoyuta had expected. The crowd is too thick for Shoyuta to launch himself with his capture tape, but he keeps moving forward in Foresight's direction. He's running, Shoyuta says into his walkie-talkie. He forces himself to keep his eyes open, not letting the effect of his quirk fade. Foresight is out of sight, but for as long as he doesn't blink his quirk will still affect the vigilante. He then starts moving faster through the crowd. This is the closest he's gotten to catching Foresight. Every time they'd sent teams after the vigilante, it had ended in abject failure. This might be the best chance Shoyuta will have to actually capture him. Shoyuta forces his way through the crowd and to the alleyway. He's about to finally escape the crowd when someone grabs his arm. He reacts instantly, grabbing the arm and twisting it. He shoves his attacker into the wall next to the alley. It's the man who'd been with Foresight. He's thin with pale hair in his mid-20s. Hey, dude. Whoever you are, he says, his voice quick and reedy. What's up? You okay? You seem kind of stressed. I know hero fights can be a lot. Could I get you something, water, a snack? I could. Something impacts the back of Shuta's head. He stumbles. He feels his quirks hold over Foresight slip. He turns and sees the other one. The woman who'd been with Foresight. She's holding a bag like a weapon. She must have hit him with it. He doesn't have time for this. He drops the man, then sends out his capture tape and encircles the two of them. They're clearly not experienced with combat and don't react in time to escape. He wraps the capture tape around a pipe mounted to the wall. Oh fuck, the woman shouts, then turns to the man. This is why we shouldn't pick fights with heroes. Hey, he shouts back, elbowing her with his very limited range of movement. It could have worked. Shoyuta turns and runs in the direction Foresight had gone. Wait. Leave him alone, the man yells after him. He's just a kid. He's trying to help. Shoyuta ignores him. He crosses through the alleyway and into the next street. At first he thinks he's lost Foresight again, but then he spots Night Eye standing in an alleyway on the other side of the street. He heads towards it. He gets close just in time to see Foresight barrel past Night Eye and into the open. For a moment there's hope on his face, then black smoke gathers around his feet. Shoyuta realizes this is the same black mist as the villain in the USJ. Kurogiri. Shoyuta is violently sent back into the memory of being in the plaza of the USJ and seeing his student teleported away by that black smoke. Before he knows what he's doing, he flings his capture tape toward Foresight. Shoyuta sees Foresight's face when he's falling. It's pure terror. He knows what the smoke means. He knows where he's going. Foresight knows he's being taken to All for One. Shoyuta isn't fast enough. Before his tape reaches Foresight, the vigilante falls through the portal. The smoke instantly dissipates behind him. Shoyuta stumbles to a stop and stares. They hadn't caught him. They'd led All for One right to him. God damn it. Shoyuta slowly steps forward to the spot where Foresight had disappeared. He crouches and touches the asphalt. Eraser. Eraserhead. Shuta's head snaps up and he sees Night Eye directly in front of him. Shoyuta had completely missed him approaching. Night Eye's leaning to the side and has a bag slung over one shoulder. We got him killed, Shoyuta says numbly, standing. He looks up into Night Eye's face and notices that something's wrong. His normally yellow eyes are filled with purple dots, changing and morphing across his irises. What happened? He asks, stepping toward Night Eye. There's something wrong with him. He looks moments away from falling over, though Shoyuta can't see any injuries. We were wrong, Night Eye says. Shoyuta grabs his arm as he stumbles slightly. We were wrong about Foresight. It was obvious but we missed it. What? Shoyuta asks. What were we wrong about? Foresight's quirk, Night Eye says sharply. We theorized mastermind or perhaps some degree of prescience, but it's much more than that. I've never felt anything like it. It's easily the strongest future-seeing quirk I've ever encountered, ever even heard of. It's likely that he hasn't just been seeing direct consequences, but up to weeks in advance. That's why he's always been 2 steps ahead of us, because he has known what's going to happen next to an extreme degree, and that's why he's been asking us about things that he should have known already. He needed to ask to get the information to himself in the past. Shoyuta freezes. He was never spying on us, he says slowly. Months of events come back to him, now entirely different with new context. Do you know what feedback is with prescient quirks? Night Eye asks, distracting him from his realization. It's when, Shoyuta knows this, it's come up in cases before. It's when two future-seeing quirks interact, it causes both quirks to no longer work. That happened, Night Eye says hoarsely, when I tried to use my quirk on him so he couldn't escape. Night Eye stops and looks down. That's why he couldn't avoid All for One taking him. God damn it, Shoyuta mutters. Quite, Night Eye answers. Shoyuta grinds his teeth and glances toward the fight still happening. It should be almost over now. It should have been a victory for them. But instead they'd lost the greatest edge that they had against All for One. What do we do? Shoyuta asks. Can we get him back before All for One kills him? We don't have any leads, Night Eye says. He takes off his glasses and presses his palm into his forehead, like he's warding away a headache. We don't know what Foresight knew, which was our greatest ace. Shoyuta stares into the distance. I just captured his accomplices, he says slowly. You, Night Eye lifts his hand and stares at Shoyuta. You what? Come on, Shoyuta says and supports Night Eye back toward the man and woman who'd been with Foresight. They pass back across the street and through the alleyway. The man and woman are still trapped in Shuta's capture tape. The woman is attempting to cut through the tape with a pocket knife. With both arms restrained, it seems to be going poorly. Oh shit, he's back, the man hisses. The woman glances up, then makes a furtive attempt to cut through the rest of the tape. Shoyuta steps forward and pulls the pocket knife out of her grip. He steps back and crosses his arms, staring at the two. They don't seem like vigilantes. They seem like civilians who wandered onto the street. Their faces and builds are quite similar. Shoyuta suspects they're related. They also have the same hair color as Foresight, which could be a coincidence or could mean that they're related to the vigilante. You, Shoyuta says looking at the man. You said that Foresight just wanted to help. What did you mean? Foresight? Yes. Oh, you mean Sparky? Sparky, Shoyuta repeats. Yeah, he says. Tiny? Kind of absent-minded? Pretty fast when he needs to be. You should have seen him run the first time The woman elbows him. We, ran together. Yeah, he's a runner. We run together. He smiles with faux innocence at Shoyuta. That's why he ran. He just likes running. He wasn't running away from you. This is just a misunderstanding. I've been chasing him for months, Shoyuta says. I somehow suspect this isn't a misunderstanding. The man and woman share a look and something passes between them. Oh. The woman says cheerily, you're that hero guy that he's been chatting with. Face taker. The man says, no, eraser guy. Eraser face. Eraser head. Shoyuta cuts them off. They don't have time for this. Oh. The man says, nice to meet you. I'm a leader. You're the leader of your group? Shoyuta asks skeptically. Nothing about the man seems suited for running a criminal operation. Nope. That's Sparky's thing. He answers, that just became my code name at some point. And I'm Slingshot. The woman adds cheerfully, so Eraserface, listen, he's been helping you with that villain guy, so you shouldn't be trying to capture him. You should be helping him, and his associates, take down that villain. Oh yeah, the villain guy. Half off. Slingshot asks. No, leader corrects, all in. No, house takes all? Night Eye coughs loudly. He's supporting himself with the wall of the alley. The two of them seem to notice him for the first time. Your friend has been captured by the villain All for One, he says, voice stiff. They freeze. They share a look Shoyuta can't parse. No, leader says. His easy smile now looks forced. He can't. He wouldn't have been caught. Slingshot elbows him into silence and they share another look. His quirk was out of commission, Night Eye says. He steps forward and gestures to his eyes. My quirk and his had an adverse reaction to one another. It led to his capture by one of the villain's underlings. In Shuta's line of work, he sees many people receiving bad news. People feeling regret. People learning that their loved ones are in danger or have died. There's something visceral about the expression of someone experiencing something unexpected and awful. So he knows that the two of them care about the vigilante. He sees the way leader's fake smile instantly disappears. The way that Slingshot takes an abortive intake of air. Oh God, Slingshot says, we told him we'd keep him safe. We promised, leader echoes. Shuta's caught off guard by the sudden change, and feels his guilt from earlier rise up. Wait. Leader leans forward, this time earnestly. You said that one of All for One's underlings captured him, which one? Shoyuta pauses at the question. Kurojiri, the one with the warp quirk. Leader deflates again. Okay, okay. Sparky has a mole, Slingshot starts. A mole. A spy, a double agent, you know? Slingshot explains. In the villain organization. It's the guy with the fire quirk. He's been on Sparky's side for a while now. We've seen them fighting, Shoyuta says, frowning. When Hawks had been called in to fight the villains by Foresight, he had needed to step in before villain with the fire quirk killed Foresight. Shoyuta has seen the video taken by civilians of the fight. No, Night Eye says, stepping forward. We saw him fight one of the villains who had shifted into Foresight's shape. So really he was fighting his own supposed allies among the villains. Shoyuta stares at Night Eye. So there's someone there in their organization who could help him? He asks, trying to stop the spark of hope he can feel in his gut. Yes, Leader says, but there's no way to contact him. Sparky's the only one who talks to him. Damn it, Shoyuta says, running a hand through his hair. There's got to be something we can do. Leader pleads. He's still bound to the wall, but he leans forward as far as he can. We need to regroup and find out what we know, Night Eye says. We might get information from the villains we captured today. Shoyuta pushes down the fear that Foresight might not make it long enough for any of this to matter. Slingshot and Leader don't run as soon as they're freed from Shuta's capture tape, which he'd been half expecting. Instead they keep telling Shoyuta and Night Eye to hurry up, which is almost as annoying as them running would have been. Soon enough they get to the Kamino police station, in a conference room that they've commandeered for the operation. We could start with the bar that he mentioned, Night Eye says. He seems to have recovered somewhat and has taken to poring over a map of the Kamino area spread across the large table. But how do we know that he's still there? Or even still in Kamino? Shoyuta tries not to let his pessimism show in his voice. Foresight's been missing for hours now. All for one could have taken him anywhere. Leader and Slingshot have taken to whispering between themselves. Leader has been audibly tapping his foot for the past 15 minutes. Even if he's not there, infiltrating a known location could give us more information about possible places he could be hiding, Night Eye argues. That's assuming that. A phone starts ringing. Shoyuta stops talking and looks around. No one answers their phone. Oh my god, you have his bag, Leader says in one breath, and Shoyuta remembers the bag that Night Eye had been carrying after his altercation with Foresight. Leader scrambles out of his seat and almost trips trying to get around the table and reach it. Shoyuta is closer though. The bag had been left behind him, leaning against the wall. He reaches back and digs through it until he finds the phone. He pulls it out and hits the answer button without thinking. Hello? Who is this? He asks, turning the phone on speaker as Leader tries to grab it out of his hands. There's a long enough pause that Shoyuta worries the line has dropped. Aizawa-sensei? Asks a very familiar voice. Shoyuta pulls the phone away from his ear and reads the caller ID. Says Shoto. Which must be Todoroki Shoto, who had fought the hero killer Stain with Foresight, and had, apparently, left out some details about what else happened that night. Todoroki, Shoyuta says slowly, trying to figure out where exactly his anger should be aimed at, his student or Foresight. Why are you calling this number? Oh, well, Todoroki says. Is Foresight okay? What? Is he okay? I heard about the thing in Kamino and I thought he was probably involved. But when I texted him he didn't answer. So I called? His voice sounds a little weak. Why do you have Foresight's number? Shoyuta asks. He gave it to me, Todoroki says, after the thing, with Stain. Shoyuta resists the urge to shout at Shoto. Is Foresight okay? Todoroki asks before Shoyuta can calm down enough to talk. Why do you have his phone? Did he get arrested? No, Shoyuta says. Inside him, the impulse to get information to save Foresight and the impulse to keep his students uninvolved and safe are warring. Okay. Where is he? Todoroki asks. His normally flat voice has grown a bit tighter. That villain captured him. Leader breaks in. Do you know anything about where he would have gone? Shoyuta grabs Leader by the arm and forcibly moves him away, ignoring the man's sputtering. He's captured. Todoroki asks. His voice doesn't quite crack, but he's a teenager so it comes pretty close. Then there's the sound of things moving in the background. You're in Kamino, right? I'll be there as soon as I can. Todoroki. Do not. His student hangs up on him. Shoyuta watches the phone like it'll start being useful if he just glares at it enough. Leader, he says, voice very flat. If you do something that leads to my students being in danger, you will thoroughly regret it. I definitely will not, Leader says. He takes a few steps away from Shoyuta. His voice sounds a little strangled. Absolutely will not do that. Good, Shoyuta says. He sets the phone down on the table. Did that help us at all? He asks resignedly. Do you have his number? We can call Todoroki again, Night Eye is interrupted by the sound of ringing from the phone. Shoyuta stares at it, then picks it up again. The call, Idaho, says Dabi. Shoyuta answers the call. This time he stays silent. Kid, you there? Asks a voice. This one is unfamiliar to Shoyuta. Whoever Dabi is, he sounds older than a teenager at least. Were you at that thing at the warehouse? Who are you? Shoyuta asks. There's a pause of a few seconds. You first, Dabi says. His tone is neutral and controlled. This is Eraserhead. He grits his teeth and says, Foresight has been captured. We are attempting to find his location. Dabi says, you sure about that? His quirk was rendered useless at the time of his capture, Shoyuta explains. Oh shit, Dabi hisses, the careful neutrality falling away. So you know of his quirk? Shoyuta says. Yeah. There's the sound of movement on the other side of the line. If you're right, then this has all gone to shit real quick. You're that hero he's been terrorizing, right? Shoyuta considers not answering that. We've been in contact for a number of months, he allows. Okay. Well, I'm the guy on the other side who he's been terrorizing. I was with the villains but have been helping him. My name is Dabi, he says. If you don't arrest me, I'll help you find him. So this was the villain who had been working for Foresight. Shoyuta tries not to let himself hope. But this might be exactly what they need. But could he let the villain off without charges? This Dabi, the villain with the fire quirk, didn't have any priors. It seemed that joining Shigaraki's group was his debut into the villain scene. Shoyuta decides that it's worth it to save Foresight. We can do that, Shoyuta says. Oh, can we have that too? Leader chirps. Who's that? Dabi asks. Oh, hi. Leader says. He leans into the phone still and shook his hand. We've been helping Sparky with all his Foresight stuff for a while now. We helped him rob that museum. His voice cuts off abruptly when Slingshot elbows him in the stomach. Allegedly helped him rob a museum, Slingshot adds smoothly. Shoyuta hadn't noticed her join them on this side of the table. She was a little more subtle than her fellow accomplice. Yes, Shoyuta says. He stares at the ceiling. It's not like this could become any bigger of a mess. Whatever, Dabi says. I don't know where Foresight is, but I do know where All for One is. All eyes in the room snap to the phone. You do? Shoyuta asks. Yep, Dabi says with a pop, and I'll give it to you for a single measly favor. What is that? Don't let the kid get killed. Todoroki Shoto stares at his phone. He just hung up on his homeroom teacher. He chews on the inside of his cheek. It'll probably be fine. He pulls on a jacket and opens the window to his room. It's almost 3 in the morning and he doesn't want to risk being caught. Shoto closes the window behind him. He creeps across the short overhanging roof, then grabs the gutter to drop soundlessly to the ground. He needs to hurry. He glances around, then jogs out of the grounds. As soon as he can, he flags down a taxi. It isn't the cheapest way to get to Kamino, but it's his father's money anyways. It takes him 20 minutes to get there. He checks the news during the drive. It seems like the fight itself has ended. Finally, he sees a picture of Aizawa. He's entering the police station. Shoto has the driver take him there. He pays and steps out. There's a lot of activity. There are a number of flashing siren lights and people milling around. Shoto sees what he thinks is a villain being dragged into the station in quirk-suppressing cuffs. He steps toward the police station, not sure where he should go. Maybe he should call Aizawa again, figure out where he is. But his teacher probably won't let him get close to the fight. Not that Shoto would stay behind anyway. Izuku is his friend and he's in trouble. Izuku is his oldest friend actually. In his loneliest days back in middle school, Izuku had been the only bearable person who wasn't his siblings or mother. He bites his cheek and steps toward the door of the station. No matter what, he is going to find Izuku. Then Aizawa-sensei walks out of the building. There's a group of people around him. Shoto doesn't recognize any of them, but it doesn't matter right now. Shoto runs toward him. Aizawa sees him long before he gets close. He looks exhausted. Shoto wonders if he fought in that giant hero fight that started the whole thing. Aizawa gestures for the people with him to continue on, then turns to Shoto. Todoroki, Aizawa says flatly. What are you doing here? I'm going to help, Shoto says. You are not, Aizawa answers. I know who Foresight is, Shoto says. I've known him for years. That stops Aizawa in his tracks. You known him for years? Aizawa says slowly. Yeah, Shoto says. Do you, perhaps, remember the interview we had with you about the Stain attack, when we asked you if you knew who Foresight was? He asked me not to tell you? Shoto tries. And you listened to the vigilante? Aizawa says. His eye is twitching. Well, he's nice. We've been friends for a while, Shoto says. Then he pulls out his trump card. He feels a bit bad for it, but he has to help Izuku. Let me go with you. I don't need to join the fight. I just need to be there when you find him. I'll tell you what I know about him. Aizawa's hands are twitching. You'll stay in the back, he says. You will listen to every order which we give and under no circumstances will directly engage the enemy. Yes, sir, Shoto says. God damn it, Aizawa mutters. Then continues walking. Shoto trails behind him. They load up into a police van. It's Aizawa, a hero Shoto doesn't know, and two people he thinks are civilians. In the front of the van are two police officers. We've called in everyone who attacked the warehouse, the other hero says to Aizawa. We're arranging a coordinated attack on the location Dabi gave us. Aizawa just nods, then stares at his hands. His fists are slowly clenching and unclenching. The van starts moving. No one is talking. Shoto sits and tries to not remind Aizawa of his presence. Eventually the van stops. Stay here, Aizawa commands. Shoto realizes that he's talking to the two civilians as well as Shoto. Maybe they also know Izuku? Aizawa and the other hero leave the van. Then the doors click. The two police officers in the front settle down, glancing back at Shoto and the civilians occasionally. The civilian woman leans across the van. You're one of the kid's friends, right? She whispers. Shoto nods slowly. And you're one of the students at UA? She asks. He nods again. I'm sorry to ask, but... She gestures to everything around them. But fighting has never been my thing exactly. She presses her hands together. If you get the chance, can you protect him? I will, Shoto promises. She smiles, a bit strained, and leans back in the seat. That's when the explosions start. It's the light first, a split second of blinding white. Then the shockwave hits the side of the van. The entire thing jolts. Shoto bangs into his seat, and the civilians would have been thrown across the van if not for their seat belts. After a few seconds of skidding, the van stops moving. The police officers in the front shout into the radio. Shoto figures that this is the best distraction he's going to get. He jumps out of his seat, then with a spear of ice, forces the back doors of the van open. He accidentally sends one of the doors off of its hinges. No time to worry about that. He drops out of the van and looks around. There's dozens of police vehicles set up in a barricade around a building. It doesn't look like anything special, just a generic 4-story office building. Maybe it's some kind of front? Shoto doesn't have much time to think about it because a second explosion rings out. He looks up and sees heroes fighting. There's more of those monster things that had been attacking Hosu. Shoto sees All Might punch one of them. It sends out a shock wave that makes Shoto stagger. More of the monster things are climbing out of the building. Definitely not a normal office building. It must be a secret hideout of some kind. Shoto needs to get closer. He glances back at the van. The civilians have climbed out. One slings a bag over his shoulder and sends Shoto a salute, then they start running away from the fight. Well, they have a stronger self-preservation instinct than any hero Shoto knows. Shoto turns and runs toward the building. More heroes are approaching it. As he gets close, All Might launches himself at the side of the building. Shoto braces for the shockwave All Might's punch will release. An entire wall of the office building shatters under the weight of his punch. Inside is a huge dark room. There's someone standing in the center. He's wearing a black mask with tendrils which wrap around his neck. He's huge and standing next to an enormous, tangled pile of pipes. His hand is resting on the forehead of another person. The other figure is small, crumpled to his knees. Shoto recognizes him. Izuku. His breath catches in his throat. The villain, the one who'd captured Izuku, looks up at the line of heroes outside the building. Then he casually lifts his hand and Izuku falls to the ground. Then the floor around Izuku turns a liquid black, and he slips into the void. Shoto freezes. The world around him moves. The heroes charge and the villain responds with a punch of pure force. The wind whips around Shoto and tears at his face. He still doesn't move. Had he killed Izuku? No, that couldn't be it. He just sent him somewhere else. Shoto just needs to find him. He just needs to save him. There's a hand on his shoulder. Shoto jumps and jerks away. It's someone Shoto hasn't seen before. He has spiked black hair and scars covering his face and arms. His clothes are worn and dark. He's staring at Shoto with a blankness that's unsettling. Even as the explosions and fighting ring around him, Shoto doesn't look away from the stranger's face. There's something there. Shoto doesn't know what it is and that sets him on edge. Hey little Todoroki, he says. His voice is rough. Want to help me find that friend of yours? Izuku is lying on his stomach. There's something soft beneath him. Then his heart starts racing and for a few moments he doesn't remember why. Without warning, everything that's happened catches up to him. Lighting the warehouse on fire. Watching from the crowd. Eraserhead. The other hero. The feedback. Kurogiri's portal pulling him down. A wave of nausea rolls over him. He winces. His head is pounding. He can feel his quirk. It's not silent, which would be much better. Instead it's punishingly loud. It feels like 1,000 different impulses at the same time. The vines are crawling across his arms in erratic fits. Feels deeply wrong. He spends a long time with his eyes closed, trying to get used to the feeling. Eventually, the waves of nausea subside and he can think again. Izuku sits up and looks around. He doesn't know where he is. It looks like some kind of waiting room for an office building. It seems bland and non-threatening. Izuku's laying on a couch. His brain finally catches up with everything that's happened. Why isn't he dead? He should be. He'd lit All for One's warehouse on fire, then immediately been captured. He should have been killed as soon as he was caught. But he hadn't been. Izuku pulls himself up and looks around. His bag is missing. He'd thrown it at the hero. Oh goddammit. He doesn't have his phone. He needs it. He needs it very badly. He has to call someone for help. He desperately wishes that his quirk would tell him what to do. Should he leave? Should he stay? Should he try and find a phone? Oh wait. That's a good idea actually. But what would he do with that? Shit. He doesn't even know anyone's phone number. Well, he does know his mom's, but he absolutely does not want to get her involved. The police? Would that be a good idea? They might try and arrest him. Wait, that's ridiculous. Being arrested is much better than whatever All for One will do to him. Izuku mutters under his breath and chews on his thumbnail. Is this what it's like for other people all the time? No wonder other people seem so stressed. Having to make your own decisions sounds exhausting. He should find a phone. He needs to find a phone. He steps away from the couch. It's as generic as the rest of the room. It screams, this is a normal business place. Izuku takes a few steps and tries to open what looks like a front door. It's locked. He tries the one that seems to go further into the office. It's also locked. He goes behind the reception desk and finds the door to the closet is also locked. He tries the phone on the desk and finds it doesn't even have a power cord. Oh shit. This must be where All for One keeps the people he's planning to kill. Izuku starts pacing around the room, trying to think of a way to get out of here. This is not his specialty. Then he pauses. He looks down at the clothes he's wearing. It's his Overlord of Knowledge outfit. The outfit of the person who All for One believes is one of his few remaining allies. A person who he would want to protect. And if All for One had seen one of his few remaining pawns being chased through a series of alleyways by multiple heroes, he would probably send his employee to grab him off of the street. Was that what happened? Had Izuku been caught, or had he been saved? For the first time in a while, Izuku thinks that he might survive this. Because that might mean that this is what his quirk wanted to happen. It might mean that there's a way to get out of this. That's the moment when Kurogiri appears in front of Izuku. He looks weathered. The metal around his neck has been dented and his smoke seems more wispy than normal. Izuku doesn't even breathe. Overlord, you're awake, Kurogiri says. And it takes everything that Izuku has not to break out in cheers. Sensei has called for you. Izuku violently pushes down every feeling he's currently experiencing, and tries to imagine what the villain Overlord of Knowledge would be feeling right now. Of course, Izuku says, trying to make his voice deep and smooth. He's rather conscious of his own face at the moment. The rather obvious lack of a huge scar. My thanks to you for the timely exit. Kurogiri says nothing, but the ground under Izuku's feet turns to dark smoke, and falls out from underneath him. Izuku lands roughly and ends up on his hands and knees. The jolt triggers another wave of nausea from his quirk. He closes his eyes and breathes. Overlord, a deep voice rumbles. Oh wait, yeah. All for One. My apologies, Izuku says. He cracks an eye open. He's in the cavernous, dark room where he'd first met All for One. The villain is still sitting on the throne of pipes, but the wires and tubes are no longer connected to him. His face, with the skin going over his eyes and nose, has been covered with a black mask with pipes which wrap around his neck. Izuku can't panic right now. He needs to be a villain. He needs to ignore all distractions and feelings and get through this. I am the Overlord of Knowledge. He repeats to himself like a mantra. The heroes, Izuku says slowly, thinking, what would the Overlord of Knowledge say? What would he be thinking right now? Izuku needed to be that villain. They attacked me. Their quirks, they had an adverse effect on my own. I see, All for One says, Do you at least know what has happened? Foresight. Izuku pushes down the urge to laugh maniacally. He sent heroes after one of your strongholds, where a great number of your Nomu were stored. He did, All for One says. He leans back on his throne. There's something off about him. Something beyond being an egomaniacal villain who's killed at least hundreds of people for his own gain. Izuku is still on his knees. The residual strain from the feedback is too much for him to manage standing. But he stares at the villain. Then it clicks. All for One is scared. He's frightened by what's happened to his empire. His eyes and hands had been suddenly and unerringly cut off. Everything that he depended on for his power he's lost without warning. All he has now is his own physical power. And he isn't even sure of that, since he has no way to know what Foresight's next move is. Izuku has a moment of indecision. What is the best thing to say? How will he know if he's made the right decision or not? He takes that feeling and pushes it away. It isn't the time for doubts. It's time for him to be sharp, perceptive, and decisive. What will you do? Izuku asks. In response to the pure gall of this vigilante? I'll kill him, All for One answers. Then I'll take everyone who he's ever known or cared about and tear them apart, while making sure they know who it was that doomed them. I am the overlord of knowledge. Of course you will, sensei, Izuku says, teeth bared in something which was not a smile. And I will be by your side as you do it. You would stay? All for One asks. After the events of today? Of course, Izuku answers. Why? All for One leans back in his throne, chin resting on his fist. Today was a setback, but I know that you are the one to follow, Izuku says, deciding what to say as he says it. Other villains they think small. They have no intention in the things they do. No legacy which they try to build. They just grab whatever they first see. Like a child choosing a toy over a bar of gold. Izuku shifts his weight to his other knee. He ignores the feeling of vertigo which passes through him. You on the other hand, you understand legacy. Izuku gestures to the huge cavern around him. You create things which last. You don't concern yourself with spreading fear for your own vanity. You don't waste time on the things which don't matter. That is why I think that I must join you. Anyone else would be a waste. Izuku pauses. He shouldn't overdo it. Well, he's not really sure what he's doing, but it seems like the sort of thing that his quirk would have him do. I see, All for One says. There's something sharper about him now. Izuku can feel his attention like a spotlight. He feels goosebumps on his arm raised with a shiver. And why exactly do you think I would take you on? Okay. I wouldn't think to tell you what to do. No obfuscation, Overlord. Let us talk without veils, All for One interrupts. Why should I take you on? Should I not leave this place, cutting the things which tie me here, and create a new empire elsewhere? Izuku stares at All for One. What does he care about? What does All for One want? Why would someone do the things which this villain does? Egomania. He believes that he deserves power over people, and that they don't deserve to be treated well. A steadfast sense that being the person who he is means that he's allowed to do the things which he does. More than that, a belief that the power that he holds justifies what he does. If you can do it, then you are allowed to, because that is all there is. Power. I couldn't ever change your mind, Izuku starts, choosing his words carefully. You've been a leader for years, longer than anyone knows. A gamble, but he needed this to have some meat to it. But you have seen how these battles are being played. Brute strength has been useless. Foresight, along with your enemy, can break any defense you raise. Block any offense you send. I mean no disrespect, because you must have seen this yourself. What is your point? All for One asks. Okay, Izuku needs to back off. The game has changed with the new player. It is now a battle of tactics and knowledge. It's about undermining your enemy before they can see you coming. Izuku lays each layer of his argument carefully, even if he doesn't know where it's going. To win in this battle, the player needs to be swift, have knowledge, along with power. You've not yet justified why I would let you join me. The reason is that I have that knowledge, Izuku says. I am the linchpin which would allow you to rise victorious. With me by your side, the heroes would be wiped away. All for One stares at Izuku, which is uncomfortable because he doesn't have eyes. Izuku leans back, settling onto his heels. Time to wait. Izuku uses the lull to close his eyes. His quirk has settled down somewhat. He can still feel the vines jerking across his skin, but it's no longer so violent. The feeling of 1,000 urges has faded to the background. He still feels lightheaded and strange, but it's manageable. Izuku opens his eyes. All for One is standing directly in front of him. Izuku manages to not flinch, instead he stares levelly up at the villain. Then there's sounds of explosions and things shattering from outside. Ah, they've come. All for One somehow sounds meditative now. I guess it was unavoidable. What will you do? Izuku asks again. Me? Nothing, he says. His enormous shoulders shrug. The muscles underneath are wrong somehow. I've realized something. Foresight is not the kind of enemy which can be fought from the front. You're right about that. But here is what you haven't said. What is that? Izuku asks. I am the overlord of knowledge. That you fought Foresight, All for One says. 4 years, you went against an opponent which took only months to tear my empire from me. And you even stole from him, stopped his plans, helped his enemies. You are the one most suited to fighting this enemy. What are you offering? Izuku asks. Everything, All for One says. He holds out his hand. There's a black dot in the center of his palm. He rests his hand on Izuku's forehead. The wall of the building collapses. Light pours into the dark room. Izuku hears shouting from outside. The sounds of battle. He stares at All for One. Izuku feels strange. Like ice is running through his veins. Like All for One sent pure cold from his hand into Izuku. He feels like he's not quite in his body, like he's only just connected to his chest and the rest of him is floating. He feels his quirk start to move sluggishly, like it's being pressed down into him. You will become me, All for One murmurs. Izuku can feel the rage and triumph in the words. Then Izuku feels like he's burning. The heat is sudden and intense and Izuku can't even bring himself to scream. All for One lets Izuku fall to the side, and Izuku lays sprawled on the ground. Then the ground around him turns liquid black. The last thing that Izuku sees is the heroes rushing toward All for One. Izuku might have blacked out because he feels himself jerk awake. He doesn't know how long he's been unconscious. He hauls himself off of the ground and to his feet. He's in the bar. The one where he'd first met the villains as Overlord of Knowledge. The secret hideout. It's empty from what Izuku can see. He sighs, then a wave of pain sends him back to his knees. It's his arms. Feels like the skin is tearing at him. He throws off the suit jacket he'd been disguised in and stares at his hands. There's something deeply wrong with his quirk. Not in the same way that it had been wrong before. It isn't aimless or confused. Now it feels like it knows exactly what it's doing. And it's attacking Izuku. The vines, which had only ever felt like ink on his skin, now are like cuts across his forearms. Instead of smooth skin, the vines are lines of raised scar tissue. The skin around each is red and swollen. The worst of the pain is on his hands. The back of his wrists feel pitted and searing, and Izuku sees a thick knot of dark vines in the place where his quirk rests when it's not active. There's another pain though, sharper and stranger. Izuku flips over his hands and finds 2 small black holes in his palms. Like the ones on All for One's hand. Izuku stares for a long time, mind muddy with pain. He watches as the vines swarm across his arm and slowly sees the pattern in it. The pain stays but it fades to the back of his mind. He feels tired, scared. But he just needs to keep going for a little while. His quirk isn't attacking Izuku. It's attacking what All for One gave him. The vines continue. They wrap around the holes in his palms. Whatever it is, it wants to spread, widen its influence. Izuku feels something in his gut and knows what the holes are. They're a quirk. A quirk with a mind. Like his own quirk. Something which has goals and wants to use him to achieve them. He reaches his mind toward the pinholes. The motion is like reaching to his own quirk for guidance, but this quirk doesn't want to help him, doesn't want him to understand. Izuku doesn't let it stop him. He spent his entire life dealing with an unwieldy quirk. This is his specialty. This is what he's been learning to do for over a decade. Izuku reaches into the quirk. Feels like All for One. Not like just a quirk. It feels like his mind is there. The thing launches another attack. Lines of black spring from the pinholes. They spiral across his arms, up his shoulders and toward his head. They want to take control. Izuku reaches for Foresight and it answers him. The vines tear apart the black lines. It hurts. Izuku ignores it. The vines close around the holes, blocking their power, suffocating it like a snake around a rat. Izuku doesn't know how long it takes, but he feels All for One's influence wink out. He slumps down. He did it. All for One tried one last trick. He gave Izuku his quirk and sent part of his consciousness along with it, hoping to take over Izuku. One last shot at continuing his legacy. Izuku doesn't know what to think about this. He's too tired now. The pain has faded, and he watches as the vines retreat towards his hands. They're different. Lighter, a little grayer. With a silvery sheen rather than a dark one. His quirk feels wrong. Ill-fitted, like it's been stretched, then shrunk back down onto him. The familiar shape has changed and some parts feel thin and weak. Izuku pulls himself to his feet. You should get out of here. Find leader and slingshot, get them out of Kamino. There's someone standing in the open doorway. Shigaraki. He's wearing his whole villain getup, with the exception of the hand over his face, which he's gripping in one of his real hands. When Izuku meets his gaze, Shigaraki dissolves the preserved hand and steps forward. I knew it, he breathes. His eyes are wild, with deep bags underneath them. His smile is wide and his lips are stretched and cracking. I knew you weren't who you said you were. I'm the overlord of knowledge, Izuku says, pulling the dredges of his persona around him. It's not my real name or even my only one, but what's a few false identities between friends? You're Foresight, aren't you? Shigaraki says like Izuku had never spoken. I thought something was off. You and him showing up at the same time? Too weird. Sensei didn't notice. You were too exciting for him to doubt. A little mini-him? Nothing else in the world could have caught his attention like that. Izuku should lie. Should make a big speech and make a big thing out of it. But he's tired, in pain, and his quirk feels like it fits him wrong. Izuku just stands there. You're good at it though? Shigaraki croons. He takes a few deliberate steps forward. Such a good liar must have been tricky keeping all those identities separate. You did such a good job. Izuku steps back. Shigaraki follows, only an arm's reach away. He smells like formaldehyde and rot. You made a few mistakes though, Shigaraki says. You made it too neat. Everything lined up too well. And Overlord only knew things which weren't helpful to our cause. The cops thought Overlord was real, but no real villains had ever met him and I asked a lot of them. Your scar. Izuku's back hits the wall. Shigaraki runs a pinky along Izuku's face, where his scar should be. Well, that was the last confirmation I needed. Izuku can't quite breathe. So many mistakes, Shigaraki says, smile cutting across his face. Izuku looks away from Shigaraki and glances at the door. He freezes. Shigaraki sees it and twists around. He's hit by a wave of ice. It launches him away from Izuku toward the back of the room. Izuku scrambles away and manages to get a few feet before losing his footing. He sprawls across the icy floor on his back. A face comes into view above him. Shoto. Izuku asks. Hello Izuku, Shoto says, then grabs Izuku by the arm and hauls him to his feet. Izuku almost falls and Shoto grabs his shoulder to steady him. Are you alright? Izuku wants to cry. He wants to laugh. He wants to scream. He wants to sleep for an entire day. Izuku says. He sounds like a deflating balloon. Let's get out of here, Shoto says. Izuku looks up at where Shigaraki had been a moment before. There's a wall of ice across the entire room. Izuku can't see through it. He does know that there's a back door to this room and Shigaraki won't be held back by ice for long. Not when he can dissolve anything he touches. Yeah, Izuku says. Shoto has to half carry Izuku at this point, but he brings them to the front door and up the stairs to the street. It's light outside, which confuses Izuku for a moment, then he realizes that it's pre-dawn light, and he'd been captured by All for One for an entire night. Then there's the sound of a guttural scream. Izuku's stomach drops. It's a Nomo. Shigaraki has a Nomo. You need to leave, Izuku says. Right now. I'm the one he wants. Shoto takes one look at Izuku, then picks him up in a fireman's carry and starts running. Izuku's clinging on for dear life, but he hears it when the Nomu smashes through Shoto's ice wall. Then Shoto skids to a stop. Izuku twists around and sees a second Nomu blocking their escape. Izuku really hopes that the last thing he does isn't getting his friend killed. Foresight. Shigaraki screeches from the door of the bar. This is the... A wave of blue fire washes past Izuku. It forms a circle around them. Shoto drops Izuku and brings up walls of ice around them. Then the Nomu starts screaming. It's awful. Izuku presses his hands to his ears. The wrongness inside his quirk grows at the sound. The screaming cuts off. The silence is almost worse. The fire dissipates. Where the Nomu had been, there's now only charred lumps. As the light spots clear from his vision, Izuku sees Dabi. He's standing in front of Shigaraki, who's shaking in rage. You, he screams. You're with that bastard? You joined that cowardly line? Izuku doesn't know what Shigaraki would have called him, because Dabi sends a wave of fire at Shigaraki. It's quick. Dabi at least gives Shigaraki that. When there's nothing but ash left, Dabi turns back and looks at Izuku, then his eyes shift to Shoto. He sticks his hands in his pockets and saunters back to them. Hey there kid, he says. His voice is exactly the same as it's always been. Like he hadn't just killed someone. You caused a lot of trouble today. How'd it all work out for you? Izuku stares at him. I'm going to start crying soon, Izuku says, because that's the truest answer he can give. Fair enough, want to see some fireworks? Dabi asks. After Dabi sends a spiteful farewell burst of fire at the villain bar, he turns around and leads them to a car, one that Izuku suspects hadn't been his this morning. He drives. Shoto and Izuku sit in the back together. Izuku's tired enough that he almost melts into the car door once he has a chance to sit down. So anyways, Dabi says blithely. Shoto and Izuku had been silent since Shigaraki. I saw all the fighting and chaos and such, and then I thought, if All for One was to send the kid somewhere and he's not dead, where would it be? So I grabbed your Todoroki friend and we started scouting places. Good thing we got there at the exact time that we needed to be there, huh? Dabi looks through the rearview mirror and makes very intentional eye contact. Izuku stares at him, then rolls his eyes. That makes Dabi smile like he's figured something out. It's not a nice smile, but Dabi's smiles never are. Lucky that it worked out that way, Dabi says, then reaches forward and turns on the radio. No one talks for the rest of the drive. Soon enough, they arrive somewhere Izuku doesn't recognize. It's been thoroughly destroyed. It looks like it might have been office buildings once. Not anymore. Buildings have collapsed. Streets have been torn up. Izuku hopes that the area has been evacuated. When they get out of the car, Izuku sees who's fighting. It's All for One and All Might. Izuku stares at them. The actual fight is happening blocks away, but Izuku shudders at the attacks that All for One is using. Izuku feels something land on his shoulders. He stiffens, then realizes that it's Dabi's jacket. Dabi, now only wearing his t-shirt, just shrugs. Thanks, Izuku says. He wraps it tighter around him. He ignores what he's pretty sure are bloodstains. Come on, Dabi says, grabbing Izuku by the arm, let's get a better view. He pulls Izuku along, and Shoto trails behind him like a lost duckling. Dabi brings them to a fire escape, but Shoto insists on using his ice to taxi Izuku up to the top of the building. Dabi mutters something and climbs the fire escape. Once they're above street level, Izuku gets a better view and sees the start of the sunrise. No wonder he feels exhausted. The light feels good though, and the warmth that comes with it. They settle on an air conditioning unit to watch the fight. It seems like it's been going for a long time. There's a wide perimeter around the fight, enforced by the police, and a number of other heroes are jumping in to help when they can. None of them hold a candle to All Might. Izuku hasn't seen him fight with this intensity in years. Izuku watches as All for One's arm grows horrendously and he sends a punch at All Might which is so powerful it tears up buildings behind him. Then he feels something. Something familiar. It's a pull from his quirk. A normal one. Izuku almost sobs. He listens to it. His wrists pull at him and he holds his hand out to Dabi, like he's waiting for something. Dabi gives him a look. Then grins widely and tosses Izuku something from his pocket. It's the phone. The flip phone which All for One had given him. Izuku looks up at Dabi. After I heard about you, I grabbed it. He shrugs. Thought it might be useful. Izuku just nods and snaps the battery into place. He powers it on and opens All for One's contact. He pauses, wondering what to write, then his fingers move. Overlord. I've escaped their watch, your gift is seated. Your legacy is secure, friend. Izuku closes the flip phone, then drops it on the ground and smashes it under his foot. It breaks into 100 very satisfying pieces. Izuku looks back to the fight. All for One pauses in the middle of an attack. His head tilts like he's listening to something no one else can hear. He laughs. The sound is amplified. Far past what should be possible with human vocal cords and lungs. The sound booms past them even from blocks away. All Might, he crows. He moves upward, floating into the air to hover above the battlefield. You think that you have won today? You're wrong. Today was the worst mistake you've ever made. Today my successor, Overlord, has risen. A light appears in All for One's hand. It's blindingly bright even from this distance. He's taken on my power, his voice booms. He'll soon be even a greater enemy than me. Today will be the first day of your downfall. From my ashes your doom will come. The light grows, then grows more. Then it explodes outward. Izuku barely has time to register what's happened, but Shoto reacts instantly. A sphere of ice surrounds the three of them. The shock wave hits a moment later. There's the sound of cracking. But the ice shield holds. Finally the sounds end. Shoto and Dabi simultaneously summon their fire to melt the ice. Between the two of them it only takes a minute for them to bore a hole through the wall. Dabi steps out first. Holy shit, kid, he says with clear appreciation. Izuku follows him out. There's destruction everywhere. The windows of every building within 4 blocks of the fight have been shattered. There's scorch marks on anything that was facing the blast. When Izuku looks back toward where All for One was, he sees destruction. The few buildings that were left near the fight are destroyed. Where All for One had been, there is only a crater. Looks like the old man bit it, Dabi says contemplatively. Huh. Then he takes another look at Izuku. His face twists. He takes a step toward Izuku and puts a hand on his shoulder. Everyone was evacuated, he says slowly. The heroes had warning. This is about the minimum destruction which could have happened. Yeah, Izuku says faintly. That's the point where he starts crying. Neither of the Todorokis know what to do, so they just sit on either side of Izuku as he curls into a ball and cries his eyes out. It's the most cathartic moment Izuku has had in months. He feels like a huge weight's been lifted off his chest. None of it is his problem anymore. All for One is dead. His followers have been scattered or arrested. Izuku doesn't have to worry about any of it now. When they climb down from the roof and walk back into the street, the heroes are waiting for them. Dabi pulls up short and grips Izuku's shoulder with iron fingers. Eraserhead is there, along with the other hero from before. Izuku doesn't know how they found him, but he has no choice but to talk to them. Eraserhead is standing in front. He looks years older. His scarf thing looks mostly shredded. There are holes and burn patches across his jacket and pants. His goggles are missing. Izuku touches Dabi's hand and he lets go. Izuku steps forward. Izuku tries to figure out what he's supposed to say. The heroes don't scare Izuku like they did before. Now they just seem tired. Like they're going through the motions of finishing the investigation. He took it then? Eraserhead asks. Everything that Izuku had been about to say goes out the window. He very carefully doesn't react and thinks about what the heroes know. They know that Izuku was captured as Foresight. They saw All for One use his quirk on him and then saw Izuku fall. And now they found him beat up, wearing a blood-stained coat with tear tracks on his face, looking about to collapse. And they have no idea how many little things had to line up for this day to end as well as it did. They think that Izuku's quirk failed and he barely survived. They think that All for One took his quirk. Izuku looks away from Eraserhead. Shoto has gone very pale. Oh yeah, he has no idea who All for One is or what he could do. Izuku only then realizes he has no idea how or why Shoto is here. He took your quirk? Shoto asks in a strangled tone. Izuku resists the urge to immediately cave and tell him it's not true. He needs to be strategic right now. The next couple minutes will be very important for how this plays out. We got him though, Izuku says. He looks Eraserhead in the eye. He's gone now. Yeah, Eraserhead agrees. You got him, Foresight. Izuku doesn't need to fake how tired his smile looks. You made a real mess, you know that? Eraserhead says. Yeah, Izuku agrees. I know. It was the only way to take him down. That other villain is still out there though, Eraserhead says. The Overlord of Knowledge. We know that All for One gave his quirk to Overlord. He'll be looking for you. Dabi makes a stifled noise. Izuku looks at him. With the scars that cover his face, Dabi's not an easy person to read. But Izuku's picked up the knack for it by now, so he knows that Dabi is trying not to laugh. Hopefully the heroes think that he's just worried for Izuku. I know, Izuku, who has an ironclad poker face, sighs. I know how to disappear though. Without your quirk? Eraserhead asks. He takes a few steps forward. Izuku sees Dabi tense beside him. We can hide you. Thank you, Izuku says, but I think that I'd better not. We can't just let you go, Eraserhead says. Not after everything that's happened. Izuku looks at him. His tired eyes and stooped frame. He knows that Eraserhead is a good hero, that he only wants to make the world a better, safer place. Izuku knows that he would keep his word. He would do everything in his power to protect Izuku. But Izuku's not in the habit of telling the truth. Not when his quirk tells him to do otherwise. And right now his quirk is telling him to talk to Shoto. Shoto, Izuku says, turning toward him. Can you tell them how we met? Shoto looks a little startled. Oh. He looks at Izuku. Shoto's not quite the actor that Izuku is, but he hesitates in a convincing manner. Okay. He turns to Eraserhead. His name is Akitani Mikumo, Shoto says. He worked for a number of years at the Todoroki compound as a gardener. He was my friend for much of that time. That's why I didn't tell you that I knew him after Stain's attack. Eraserhead seems shocked at how straightforward the answer is. Is that enough? Izuku asks. That is? Eraserhead stops and looks over Izuku's face again. Izuku knows he looks absolutely miserable at the moment. Yeah, that's enough for today. We'll find you again. And if you ever need help, we'll be willing. Thank you, Izuku says, genuine this time. There's a honk from the street. The trained fighters startle. Dabi summons his flames. Shoto's right side freezes over. Eraserhead whips his bandage toward the noise. Hey Sparky. Leader calls cheerily from the back seat of Slingshot's car. How'd it go? Izuku, who has slow reflexes at the best of times, hadn't yet moved. It went pretty bad. He calls back. The heroes and villain around him slowly relax. Hard knock life. Leader replies. Want to ride back home? Absolutely. Izuku shouts back. Give me a second. I'm going with you, Dabi says levelly. Oh, all right. Izuku agrees when he sees Dabi's expression. He turns to Shoto. Thank you for, saving my life? You're welcome, Shoto says. Izuku hugs him. Shoto freezes, then pats his back a few times. I'll see you around, Izuku says, then pulls back. Okay. Okay, Shoto echoes, a slight smile on his face. Izuku grins back. He turns to Eraserhead. He just sighs, then gestures for Izuku to continue. Izuku marches to Slingshot's car, Dabi in tow. Dabi joins Leader in the back and Izuku's getting in the passenger seat when something stops him. The other hero, the one with the future scene quirk, steps forward. Foresight, he says. I'm sorry for the harm I caused you. Izuku looks at him and sees the devastation in his face. The guilt there. That stops Izuku in his tracks. He can't quite stomach the idea of this hero spending the rest of his life feeling guilty for something he didn't do. Well, Izuku makes poor decisions all the time. What's one more? Izuku stoops down into the car. On my mark, he tells Slingshot. She blinks at him, then suppresses a smile. Izuku stands still half in the car. This isn't really a good idea, and it isn't something that his quirk wants him to do. But Izuku is done with causing people pain today. Okay, he shouts back at the heroes, being fully honest with them for the first time. I thought I should tell you that he didn't actually succeed in taking my quirk. Thanks for all the help though. Okay now. Izuku manages to swing himself into the car as Slingshot floors the gas. His door bangs shut beside him. Izuku sees Eraserhead fling his bandages at the car, but they're already too far. The other hero looks dumbstruck. Shoto looks relieved. Izuku hopes that Shoto doesn't get in too much trouble for this. Left. Izuku shouts, buckling his seatbelt. Slingshot makes a hairpin turn and the heroes are out of sight. Dabi is laughing hysterically in the back seat. They continue through the streets at breakneck speeds for a few minutes, with Izuku giving them directions from his quirk. Eventually the sense of urgency disperses. Okay, we're good, Izuku says. Slingshot slows down to a normal speed, then joins the stream of traffic. Kid, Leader says from the back seat. Izuku looks back at him. His face has a sort of seriousness that Izuku has never seen on him. Promise that you will never ever do anything like that again. I will never ever do anything like that again, Izuku says with complete sincerity. I hated every single thing that happened today. Leader relaxes into his seat. You've got blood on your coat, Slingshot says. Did you get hurt? Should we take you to a hospital? No, I'm fine, Izuku says. This is Dabi's coat. Then something occurs to Izuku. Wait, did you get hurt? Izuku asks. Not my blood, Dabi says with a smirk. You're super creepy. Leader chirps. I'm Leader, it's nice to meet you. Dabi doesn't seem to know what to do with Leader's enthusiasm and says nothing. Leader, however, has never been one to be discouraged by silence. Thanks for helping rescue Sparky. I'm a bit of a criminal myself, but all that fighting stuff is a bit out of my wheelhouse. I've always been the type to avoid the fighting part of villainy. Not that I don't do interesting things sometimes. I lit a warehouse on fire today, which I think is some signify. You lit the warehouse on fire? Dabi asks. He sounds baffled. That was you. Izuku leans against the car door and closes his eyes. Yeah. It was my first arson. Actually, I've got a bingo card I've been filling out with different crimes and this might fill out a row. Which I think. Izuku flinches as something touches his arm. He's disoriented for a few seconds, then realizes he's in Slingshot's car. It's parked on the side of a familiar street and is softly clicking in the cool air. They're outside his apartment. Dabi had opened his door and is looking at him. Oh. Izuku blinks heavily. He must have fallen asleep. He feels even more tired than before. Thanks. He unbuckles and steps out of the car, except he's exhausted and almost falls before Dabi grabs his arm and hauls him upward. Leader and Slingshot are standing on the sidewalk. Hey kid, Leader says. He pulls Izuku into a hug. Please don't commit any more crimes, okay? Alright, we'll avoid that, Izuku agrees. He hugs Slingshot and then she gives him a bag. It takes him a few moments to realize that it's his bag, the one he threw at the hero. He has no idea how Slingshot even got it. Had she talked to the hero? Whatever. Izuku half leans on Dabi as the two of them get back in the car. He waves as they drive away. I left my keys in the apartment, Izuku says meditatively. Dabi takes a deep, calming breath. But he doesn't let go of Izuku, which is good because he would have fallen on the pavement if he had. Fucking babysitting duty, Dabi mutters. But he helps Izuku up the stairs. He takes a tool out of his pocket, then uses it to pick the lock. He drops Izuku on the bed, then looks around. What's with the plants? He asks. My official quirk is that I can make plants grow good, Izuku says. Dabi stops. That's dumb as shit, he says. Yep, Izuku says. He hasn't yet moved from where Dabi dropped him. Don't die when I'm not there, Dabi says. Okay, thanks. Izuku says because that's about as nice as Dabi gets. Dabi mutters something, then stomps out of the apartment. But he shuts the door behind him and Izuku hears the click of it locking. Izuku makes the monumental effort to turn his head toward the window. It's now fully light outside. It would absolutely suck if he couldn't fall asleep. And he's out. Aizawa Shoyuta sits down heavily on his desk chair. Yesterday had been a headache of unimaginable scope. There had been property damage the likes of which they hadn't seen in decades. Dozens of heroes had been involved. Multiple police departments had been mobilized. A minimum of a dozen procedures had been either ignored or actively broken. Not to mention the injuries All Might sustained from All for One's final attack. At least now some of his questions have been answered. There are still problems. The Overlord of Knowledge is still out there. And if All for One had been telling the truth, then he'd inherited the villain's quirk. But that was a known threat. Something that could be worked on over time. It will take Overlord time to establish a power base, and when he does, the heroes will be ready for him. Shoyuta sighs and pulls his computer to him. He's not pleased that Foresight, or rather Akatani, had managed to escape. He really should have immediately got him in quirk-suppressing cuffs the instant he'd found him with Todoroki and the villain Dabi. But the kid had looked exhausted. It hadn't hit Shoyuta until that moment that Foresight really was a kid. He couldn't have been older than Shuta's own students. Something in Shuta's chest had twisted at the idea of arresting him. Even after he'd told them that his quirk hadn't really been taken. Shoyuta had made only a token attempt to capture him. Mostly because he knew that the kid was in danger from Overlord, and it wasn't like the heroes had done anything to earn his trust. But Shoyuta did have a name, and at least a few years of work records on the vigilante. He sighs and runs a search on Akatani Mikumo. He sees a few years of records. Years of perfectly normal existence. With taxes and an address. Perfectly solid. But the instant he looks deeper, it's obviously a fake name. Akatani Mikumo had been made up 3 years ago. As far as fake identities go, it's solid, but there isn't much to make up for the fact that his school records, his parents, and his address are all fabricated. Shoyuta sits at his desk, very carefully not moving for several minutes. The urge to smash his computer into tiny pieces is almost unimaginable. God. Fucking. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Support the writer. Don't forget to like, sub, share, and donate for more videos.